Hello, and welcome to Get Recc'd. I am your host, Louis Falgout.
And I am your other host, Stephen Falgout. Get Recc'd is our occasional podcast where every week I recommend something to Louis, and Louis recommends something to me, and then we discuss the recommendations.
Hey! Hey, Steven! Hey! Steven! Hey! Hey, Steven!
This again.
Hey! Steven! Hey! You know what your name sounds like?
What's that?
Peven!
And I'm one of the many fruits, voiced by Tobuscus.
Hey!
Chicken and a biscuit.
Hey, Tobuscus fruit! Hey!
What's that?
Knife! Ah! And with that, I think we should move into what I recommended to you last week, Stephen.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so last episode I recommended to Steven the album Earth 2. This is the debut album by drone metal act Earth. This album was released in 1993 and is considered the foundation of the drone metal genre, as well as a massively influential album in the worlds of drone and experimental music in general. And that's pretty much all I have to say about that.
So, I have never heard or listened to drone metal. I don't know if that would surprise you, but I'm bringing back an old catchphrase, which is I have never heard of this before going into this. So, I am only mildly even familiar with like the noise centric genres or genres around ambience. So this was kind of like a brand new experience. And it has all of the trappings of being in the room with somebody tuning their guitar while a band plays 5 rooms down from you. And I don't think that's good. I don't think it's good. Like, I listened to it with my ears, and my ears were like, this isn't good. But then something happened. Just like last week, is like the more I listened to it, the more I was like, I can get into these lo-fi hip-hop beats to relax and chill to. And this time, I will say this, and this is probably honestly just what this type of thing is best at. Like, just putting it on in the background, I was playing some games, I was like doing something else. Just having it in the background is pretty good. Especially because I was playing like a Dark Souls style gaming experience, which itself is kind of metal. Having that like ambient metal really upped the overall experience. Now, I don't think that I would listen to this or anything else in this genre ever again, to be frank, but I will say, as I listened to it more, I started to understand the composition and the layering, and where my initial listen, it just all sounded like noise. As I listened to it more, I started to parse melody and the sonic experience, some of the guitar work and drum work, especially as you get into like track 3. This is only a 3-track album. Track 3, just the guitar work throughout the entire experience. But with all that being said, it was eye-opening in a way, but I think from here on out, I'm going to close my eyes back up and probably never relate to anything in this genre ever again.
It's kind of like Tool, how they opened your third eye and then you shut it, you know, because Tool opens people's third eye. So one of my favorite things about Earth 2, in fact, it probably is my favorite thing about Earth 2, because I don't like Earth 2 at all, but I think my favorite thing about Earth 2 is on the back of the CD for Earth 2, like on the back cover, there's all these, like, mock parody quotes that say, like, I don't have the CD on me. Let me pull up an image of it, actually. Earth 2 back cover. It's pretty funny, but it's also the way people talk about this sometimes. Oh, this isn't the Earth 2 back cover. This is the back cover of iPhones. What? Earth 2 album, back cover. Here we go. Okay. Some quotes like, A new, yet seemingly ancient kind of experience. Dot, dot, dot. Very unusual. Dot, dot, dot. A physical presence in the room. Dot, dot, dot. I can almost touch the sounds. Forget drugs and alcohol. Dot, dot, dot. I am now very, very mellow. I just find that pretty funny because I think it's like a cute, like, oh, like, look at these, like, magazine ads for what this would be like. But it's interesting because I don't know, like, how much of this album was a joke. I've heard varying things on that, whether, like, this was kind of just a funny thing they were doing or if they took this super seriously or what. But regardless, like, those mock quotes ended up being, I think, the way a lot of people interpret listening to this and interpreted this, and it's how this album influenced so many other artists. I mean, like, I don't, the world of drone metal seems kind of vast, because on one hand you have stuff like Boris, who get called drone metal, and they definitely do, like, work with drones, but there's certainly a lot more like a standard metal act than fucking Earth is. And then you've got stuff like Sun, which I have never listened to, but if I understand it correctly, Sun is a lot more like this, where it's kind of like mostly just guitar and really, really long notes. But I think Earth 2 also, like, definitely had influence on just drone in general. Like, I would imagine a lot of, like, people going on and making, like, their Bandcamp experimental drone album that's, like, a 1-hour track of one note or something probably has heard Earth 2. So it's, like... But I think a lot of the goal of music like this, at least from people who do take it seriously, is that it does, like, it can be very lifting, it can be, like, super relaxing and super mellow, and also that you can get a lot of texture out of one note if you linger on it for a really long time. And I can definitely agree with all those things in concept, but I feel like the thing about Earth 2 is that I don't know what this was recorded with, because I find it kind of funny that despite the fact that, like, the only thing on, at least on the first two tracks, is literally just guitar. I think it's two guitars, or no, guitar and a bass. It's a guitar and a bass, I think. And then on the third track, there's, like, some cymbals. But other than that, it's, like, that's all they're working with. So really, you have to record, like, what, a bass and a guitar. You have to record, like, an amp. The sound quality of this is really, really bad. Like, this is recorded very poorly, which is kind of just funny to think about, that, like, this should be the easiest thing to do. Like, okay, we got a guitar player, let's just, like, mic that up and that's it. You don't have to worry about anybody else playing in the same room or anything. It seems easy, but I feel like that's where this really falls flat. So, like, at least when I listen to this, like, I'm not able to, like, really, like, listen into these notes and to these drones to really pull a lot of sound out of them, or a lot of different textures, or ambient room noises or anything, because the recording quality just isn't good enough. But that being said, I do feel like it is kind of like, I don't know, maybe it's fun as a patience tester, like, to actually try and sit and listen to this, like, intently. Like, probably takes a certain kind of person to be able to just do that and just vibe for, like, the, what, like, 1 hour length of this or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, well, that was my first listening experience, so let me tell you, it's not good. It's bad.
Oh, I know. I've tried. I tried multiple times. It didn't catch me.
Yeah, would you not say that the recording quality is a portion of this thing's charm, though?
Maybe it is for some people, but to me, no. Because I think drone is a really cool concept. I haven't listened to, like, a fully drone album all the way front to back. Aside from this, though I have heard, like, drone tracks. I'm at least familiar with drone to, like, some very basic degree. And I already know that I've heard drones used in other kinds of music, though, a lot. So, like, and I think the concept of drone, which for anybody who doesn't know, is essentially a really, really long note. That's what a drone is. And that the genre of drone is just working exclusively with that, essentially. Like, I think that concept is awesome because I've heard drones that were profoundly impactful, like stuff that, because of the way it was recorded and the sound quality of that tone, you hear so many things, and it is eye-opening. It's actually it can be mind-blowing to realize, like, how much untapped musical potential there is with something like that. Like, we always want to organize notes into melodies and stuff like that, but you can actually get a crazy amount of sound out of only, like, one note or one chord or something like that. And I feel like in order to do that, though, in a recording, you need to have recorded that sound well. It needs to be produced well so it can capture what it might sound like if you were there live. So maybe like in this case that might be part of the charm, I suppose, but like for me, like it just that's what makes it lack everything that it could otherwise have.
Can you imagine going to a live performance of Earth 2?
Yeah,
Like
and I imagine it would actually be pretty sick.
just like vibing out in a stadium with at least 10 other people and listening to Earth 2
Hey,
live.
hey, this album is popular, okay? I don't know about at the time though, but there are acts like Sun who do this kind of thing live. I've seen like live performances of Sun where like the dude's got a guitar and playing three notes, one note and then two notes below it, like really, really slowly over the course of like tens of minutes. And there's a lot of people who go to these shows. And what you have to remember that something that you would get in a live setting of music like this that you wouldn't get in a recording, at least not in most cases, is imagine, like, if you've been to a live rock show, you know how loud the sound of, like, just like, the guitar amps can be. And, like, the sound of a bass, like, just goes through your body, you know? Even in, like, your standard rock show, this is a feeling you get. So if you imagine this kind of thing in that setting where the sound's coming off the walls, the low tones are going through your body, and, like, you're just overwhelmed by that sound and sensation, you can start to imagine, I think, a lot easier what the appeal of this would be.
I just wonder, like thinking back to 1992, 1993, that they put this on a studio album is wild to me. Like that there was a record label that picked this up is crazy to me. Especially when you could consider like, I mean, the early 90s definitely had some experimentation. You think about grunge and those sorts of things, but this is like really out there for the time.
Yeah, I mean, in the world of metal and rock music, certainly. Although it's worth noting that, like, you know, experiments of this sort had been going on in the world of, like, modern classical music and experimental music for way before now, you know, for way before this. But I will grant you that imagining being a label, signing Earth, being like, yeah, well, you know, we'll mass distribute your project is definitely pretty crazy. Because at
And you
least,
just
like,
imagine the album, the record label executives listening to it. They're like, okay, all right, that was a good first note. So
Yeah.
where's the rest of it?
yeah. I don't know if you guys knew this, but we have to sell this. Yeah, like, I mean, well, when you talk about the world of classical, like, a lot of those composers at least have, like, prestige behind their names, you know. Although, if I'm not mistaken, one of the two members of this band was, like, friends with Kurt Cobain or roommates with Kurt Cobain or something, so probably had something to go off of there. I don't know if he worked with Kurt Cobain, but I am aware of that, so I don't know if that helped him in getting a sign or what. I have no idea. But yeah, it is just very weird to think about. And it's also weird to think that, like, other metal musicians heard this and were like, we're going to incorporate this kind of thing into what we do, or we're just going to carry on what Earth had done here. It's definitely odd. Like, as an experimental album, as a drone album, I don't think that this is super surprising to listen to, but, like, as a metal album, like, what the hell were they thinking? Like, imagine being, like, another metal band, like, coming out of the 80s, you know, where a lot of metal was starting to lean much more and more towards technicality and speed and aggression and all this stuff, and then, like, these dudes show up and they're just like, we're just gonna, like, play a note for 30 minutes. It's just like, what the hell?
I will say this about the album. It's interesting because I feel like, although you did mention there's definitely experimentation in this same genre of music in like a classical setting and those sorts of things, and experimentation with sonics as you think about playing as a live orchestra, like as you mentioned, even if you think about playing something like this in a live setting, you have sound bouncing off of walls and those sorts of things. But the one thing that I did think about when I listened to this, I don't know, probably like the third time, was this is something that feels so distinctly defined by electronics. And I think that that's a cool thing that this album brings forward. And I'm sure at this point, it's like absolutely advanced since then. And even if you think about everything that came before it, it's like specifically because you have electric guitar, electric bass, and those sorts of things on this album, you get a very distinct sound quality and a very distinct sound texture that I think is something that I feel like most likely was the reason why that this influenced so many others to come later.
Yeah, and also it's not even just like using an electric guitar for this, but you also consider like it's like a metal tuning with like a metal distortion guitar. Like this, the way this guitar sounds on this album, you could very much imagine being in like a broader metal setting. You know, like maybe not like thrash or something, but maybe something like sludge metal or something like that. You can like really you hear that heaviness, and even you could hear this in like a Black Sabbath recording or something like. And I think that tone and that tuning probably really wasn't explored in this way. And, I guess it could give you an appreciation for that kind of sound. But yeah, again, like this is my problem is that I think this album's interesting to talk about, but like listening to this, I think it just falls completely flat in its face because again, it's just not recorded well. Like that's literally all I ask for. They did not lose me at the concept here. Like most people would definitely be lost at the concept, especially if you told them that the third track, which is the longest track in here, it's 30 minutes, is literally just one note. It is literally one note. Nothing else. The first two like have melodies, albeit
With percussion.
Yeah, well, yes, there are like cymbals. There are cymbal crashes, but the actual the it's just one. Otherwise, it's just one note being extended for 30 minutes. By the way, which is pretty impressive to keep layering that and to keep playing it in a way so it sounds seamless because you can't actually just hold a guitar note down and just let it do that forever. They probably had to use pedals and stuff like that, which is I guess kind of neat. They didn't lose me with that though. In fact, that third track's my favorite one here. So they didn't lose me, but what I think my issue is they lost me in the execution, really, which, maybe you can't blame them because maybe nobody working on this had any fucking idea how you would want to make this sound anyway, since it was kind of a new idea with this setup. That's totally possible. But still, like, that just where it falls flat for me. I haven't been able to find a listening environment or a volume of listening to this where that problem goes away for me. It's something I always notice, and I definitely think it's what makes this not work for me.
Yeah, and I can definitely see that. Well, this thing is kind of hard to talk about because it is just 3 tracks. Each of them get progressively longer and have progressively less going on. So I think I've kind of said my piece, Lewis. I don't know if you have anything else to say about this one.
Oh yeah, no, we can wrap it up. Go ahead.
Okay, so I know last time, I remembered this, someone in the chat thought that I would give this album an Earth 2 out of 10. I will not be giving it a 2 out of 10. I actually kind of liked it a little bit better than a 2 out of 10, but only marginally, so I give it a 3. I don't recommend this. I don't think it's a good listening experience. I feel like there are very, very niche situations where I would even listen to this again. As I mentioned, it was kind of an interesting listening experience as I had it in the background of some other things. I think that's probably where this thing shines the best and where a lot of this ambience obviously shines the best. But for the most part, no, I do not recommend it.
Yeah, I would give this a 5, actually. I'm right down the middle with it, because, again, conceptually, I think it's cool. I am still open to hear, like, more drone metal of this variety. Like, I'll totally listen to Sun. I know Sun's, and, maybe some more Boris. Like, I'm totally down. I think it's cool. And I think if this album was recorded well, I'd actually like it a lot, because I think some of the melodies they're working with are actually fairly cool, and some of the ideas are fairly cool, and all of that. But it's just like, as it stands, it just feels like it's just poorly recorded, which again is like such a major element here. It cannot be overstated how much that matters, considering that it's one of the only like working factors to what this album is anyway. So I would just need better sound quality is really the only thing. Yeah, I mean, I'm shocked you didn't absolutely loathe it, because that's what I thought was going to happen. That's why I wrecked it. I mean, I don't even like this album, so I wasn't trying to get you to see a ton in it, really. I mean, obviously a 3 is very low, but it's true. It is not an Earth 2 out of 10, so I guess there is that. And would I recommend this? No, not really. I mean, no, I wouldn't. I know there's definitely a crowd that likes drone and that thinks this album is a masterpiece and a classic. So if it sounds like it's for you, go ahead and give it a shot. But like, would I recommend this to your average person or even your average music listener? No, I really would not. So that's all I have to say. And should we move on to what you recommended to me, Steven?
Yes, we should.
Okay, go ahead.
Lewis, last time I recommended to you the multimedia series, I guess you would say, but most famously, YouTube series Annoying Orange. Annoying Orange is a YouTube series started by Dane, some last name that I can't pronounce. He shows up a lot in videos. Basically, Annoying Orange, the premise is there's an orange and he's annoying and they make puns and stuff. They ended up getting a TV show for a while. They had merchandising and video games and anything you could possibly imagine. I think at this point they're still going strong on YouTube and nothing else. But with that, I will hand it over to you, Lewis, to talk about the Annoying Orange.
Yeah, so, okay. This is one of those weird relics. Like, God, it's it's so hard for me to give an intro to something like this. I feel like it's weird because first of all, let's say something right off the bat. Annoying Orange is still going strong, like at least as strong as a old channel like this could possibly go. They're doing pretty well, which I was surprised by because I hadn't really like. It's not like I've seen Annoying Orange around lately. Like last time I remember Annoying Orange being a thing people talked about outside of like ironic memes is like God, like half a decade ago at least. So it's pretty crazy, but good for them. And yeah, I remember them getting a show and all that, but like, it's just crazy to me to think about the fact that they're still going at all because like, this is the kind of thing that just, I don't think you could explain this to somebody and get them to understand why this ever took off if they hadn't have been on YouTube and been on the internet around like the early 2010s and the late 2000s. There's just no way they would understand. They would have no frame of reference. Because, I mean, I was around for that. I was massively into YouTube at this time. I liked The Annoying Orange when I was a kid. I liked Danebo before Annoying Orange came out. I remember when that video released, and I remember watching it, before it had blown up, because I was a fan of him before. Prior to this, he did these really stupid videos of food with faces, like screaming when they get cooked, which is a joke that's really not that funny, but there is something kind of like charmingly simple about some of those old videos. It's just weird though. But as a kid, it was funny. And yeah, like even though I was around for it and watched all of this, like I still haven't gone back to this. Like I'm just like, what the hell? Like how did this take off? I will say this. The first Annoying Orange video, hot take, okay, it's not that bad, okay? I was the first thing I watched. I tried to watch the early series and watch like every episode up to like 10 or something. I couldn't figure out the order after a certain point, but I tried to watch all the original ones to give myself some context for whatever I was going to see next and try to remember these videos. And the first video is like, I'm not going to say it's funny because it's not. But it's close to being funny. I can at least see what the joke is, that it's like sort of like a parody of like a kid's show kind of thing where it's like, oh, this character's so annoying. Don't you just like hate characters like this, And then like they kind of are like, oh shit, it gets dark. And then like the other guy dies and it's like out, you don't expect it. And whoa, and the video like takes a turn. I do think that the little gag at the end of him then turning to Pear, who you didn't see the whole time, and Pear's like, fuck. Or, that's not what he says. He doesn't say fuck. There's no F words in Annoying Orange. You can show this to your kids. But I think that's like actually kind of a decently funny gag. So like, I can see that, okay? Like, I think that video is not unbearable by any stretch, okay? But it's not really that great either. It definitely, though, I will say, surpasses the standards of some viral videos from around that time, so I'll give it credit for that. But, like, God, going past that video, I mean, even onto the second one and onward, I have literally no idea how people were, like, following along with this and enjoying this. Aside from, like, literal children, which maybe was always the audience. I guess that's, definitely possible. But aside from that, like, what in the hell? Because literally, it's funny that the first episode definitely comes across as like a parody, because it definitely does. It's funny because after that point, this series just turns into like this. Literally, the entire joke is the things Annoying Orange says, that like he's annoying and he's wacky and funny. Like, and it's just like, what the hell? Because that was kind of the opposite of what I felt like they were going for in the first episode. But from that point onward, he's like the star. He's so funny. His terrible puns are supposed to be funny. They're not even like bad in a funny way. And, you know, for at least a long while, then it ends in the other fruit dying. And it's like, well, yeah, you know it's gonna happen. It's not like it's unique or clever or interesting anymore. And then it gets even worse because then they start doing it where like the fruit will die, but then it'll, like, for example, there's a tomato that gets grinded, and then it comes back on a plate as ketchup, and Annoying Orange says another joke to him, and he's still got a face even as ketchup. And it's like playing the stupid, corny, like, rockabilly in the background. It's just like, I don't even know. I just at a certain point I just completely lost the understanding of what made this hit at all, but I don't know.
It is wild that not only are they still going, they're going with like multiple videos a week across like 10 different channels. Like, there really is something to be said for the amount of effort and time that takes. Now, is that time well spent? Maybe not, but it's like gaming channels and kids version and regular version, and this is absolutely, to me, the Annoying Orange is like pinnacle, peak, early, like YouTube. And there aren't many channels that have survived for as long as Annoying Orange has. I think in that time frame, it's like you have PewDiePie's coming up. You have like Smosh, that was like way, way early YouTube. And maybe a few others. But for the most part, that this thing has survived because it truly is, as you mentioned, like a relic of that time. And that it's still going strong. And the other thing I'll say, it's like, in a weird way, this is kind of what kids media has become. I don't know if Annoying Orange directly influenced that, or maybe I should say directly influenced the algorithm so that it is that. But if you look at like YouTube Kids, it's like all this kind of stuff, and it's wild. Now, this absolutely, they put a lot more effort into this than a lot of other kids kind of channels do now, but even still, it's just so crazy to me that this has lasted as long as it has. And that's nothing to say for the fact that at a certain point they had even a show on Cartoon Network. And they weren't the only YouTube channel. Like Fred had a show and some others, but that they got a network television show from YouTube is just so bizarre.
Well, it's especially bizarre, again, when you actually watch, like, the first episode. Because, like, again, it's like it was parodying this. And it just became it, like, unabashedly. And it's found success just being for kids, which is, I just, honestly, it's so hard to believe. But what's even crazier is, so I didn't just watch the early episodes. I watched a good amount of them to get a good feel for it, okay? But I went forward and I started watching the newest content that this channel produces. It's shocking, okay? Like, it's hard to describe. So it's literally just kids and toddlers watching this now. It's very obvious. Like, that's what this content is very, very clearly geared to. It's like basically a baby show. It's like, you know, the kind of thing that like you have YouTube Kids for, where like YouTube Kids will just cycle through like kids videos so that if you're a parent, you can kind of just give your kid the phone and they'll watch the videos. That's what these videos very much are now. There's this series Ask Orange, and like all of the comments are clearly from children. And they're constantly asking them to drop things on Pear, so you just get a ton of like scenes of Pear screaming as stuff falls on him, which you can see how like toddlers would enjoy. And you have like references to Five Nights at Freddy's. Like, I saw one where there were Foxy jump scares in it. I saw another one with, I saw multiple with a bunch of Baldi's Basics references. And these are things that I barely know about. Like FNAF I know about, but Baldi's Basics is just something that kids have liked for a couple years. I still don't know what it is. And stuff like that where it's like, it's so weird to see like Annoying Orange and Five Nights at Freddy's coming together officially. it's just bizarre to me because these are like worlds that feel so far apart to me, but apparently not. Um, there are also like I saw one where they were doing like a hydraulic press challenge, and it was just awful. And let me say as well that the annoying orange character has gotten even more annoying. His voice is different now. They basically just fart a lot. They do a lot of farting. There's this weird like thing with TNT where like there's always TNT and it blows up. Look, I'm not a toddler, so I don't know. Like, toddlers would probably really have a good time with this. I'm just saying that I find it so bizarre watching, like, their new content. And even watching stuff they were doing a couple years after, like, I forgot about this channel. Like, when they were doing song parodies, I watched the infamous Gangnam Style parody, the Orange Nyanya style. It is hell. But I saw one that was even worse, which was the Friday parody, you know, Rebecca Black's Friday. But it was fry, as in French fries, Friday. And it was like the worst thing, like one of the worst things I've ever seen. But it was another place where I was just like, I can't even believe that not even like 3 years after like that first video came out, like this is what this was. And I take it that was probably around the time that the TV show was going on too. So, like this brand, I don't even know what this is anymore. And you mentioned the gaming channel, which I didn't watch, but I am aware of it. I can't, like, what the hell? And I mean, props to the team for managing to still make money off of this. It's shocking to me. It's crazy. But yeah.
I just want to go through some of the quality content that Annoying Orange has produced. Lewis, of course, you mentioned their song parodies, but they not only parodied songs, they also parodied media, various other forms of media. So let me just talk you through some of the puns on this list of puns I'm looking at. Now, Annoying Orange, of course, always has puns. That's one of the staples, other than the knife killing things. So Lewis, I just want to get your take on some of these. If you want to go ahead and rate them,
Yeah,
that
I'll
might
rate
be
them.
good.
I'll rate them. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's do a rating from 1 to pun.
Sounds good.
Okay, so here we go. So let's start with a good one here. So Lewis, of course, you remember the classic YouTube video "David After Dentist."
Oh yeah, classic.
So let me go ahead and read you the pun for this one.
Okay.
Orange after dentist.
That's a 1. That's a 1.
Okay, that's a 1.
That's
Gotcha.
got to be a 1. Yeah.
Okay, so let's see if I can hit you with a better one here.
Okay.
So you know, of course, the band Nickelback.
Yeah.
How about Pickleback?
That's a pun.
Okay.
That gets a pun.
Okay, good.
That gets a pun.
Okay, good. All right, so then let me hit you with the final one.
Okay.
You ready?
Mm-hmm.
Of course, you know the movie Taken.
Classic.
Well, what if instead of Taken, it was just called Bacon?
I'm gonna give that a PU. That's 2 letters of pun.
Ouch.
Yeah.
Ouch.
Yeah.
That's harsh. Lewis, I want to talk about some other things that this channel has done that I'm looking through the Wikipedia list now. So apparently they've done Mystery Science Theater 3000 style like spoof videos over movie trailers. The other thing that I'm seeing here is they've done a show where they interview celebrities. I'll talk you through some of the celebrities here. Now, most of them are internet celebrities. Flula Borg, I don't know why he went on that. Miranda Sings, Rhett and Link, of course, you know all these classic YouTubers. But then Weird Al. Do you know about Weird Al, Lewis? Have you heard of him?
Yeah, I have. I missed that one. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. There's just so much that they've done. And Lewis, I want to hit you with one last. I know I said it was the final, but I want to hit you with one last pun because they had their own line of comics. I guess somebody made a comic out of Annoying Orange. They only ran for 7 issues, but the 6th issue was called My Little Baloney.
Well, I have to give that a pun. I mean,
Okay, I thought you might.
Yeah,
You might.
I can't. Come on. Yeah. Yeah, by the way, that is something to note, that the puns aren't really puns. They're just things that rhyme. I noticed that. I didn't notice it at first, but I did notice it after a little bit. I think the reason is that, again, like, originally, Orange being annoying and not being funny was what was the point. But very quickly it wasn't anymore. Like, and he was carrying the show. And, like, when you have to focus on the things he says, you realize it's like, wow, this is not very creative. And I mean, especially as you go, like, years in where they're still doing this shtick, it's just like, I can't even... Like, writing this must be pretty easy. Like, I will grant that the process of making these episodes is definitely more effort than a lot of other YouTubers who make content this regularly have to put in, but the writing process is definitely the shortest part. Okay, that part probably doesn't take too long. I can't imagine that part's too hard. And it definitely shows. I mean, it's just like obviously this is awful. I mean, like, you know, I mean... I wasn't really gonna come here and just talk about how awful it is, because first of all, everybody knows that, and even if you didn't know it, you could probably guess just by looking at the picture I have on screen. It's like, yeah, it's awful, but it's just interesting to me, I guess. It's just bizarre. I just cannot imagine something like this coming up today, even with the YouTube Kids landscape, which you said is very much takes a lot from this and basically just kind of is this these days, which is not something that I thought about, but I totally agree with you. And it was kind of crazy when you said that, and then I really thought about it, and I was like, yeah, that is kind of true. Which is again is kind of funny, because that means that all of YouTube Kids content essentially came from a parody of kids content, which is just fucking weird, but totally possible. But you know, I still just don't think that in this landscape something like this would show up. It's just so bizarre, especially what it's turned into. I guess that's just fascinating to me. You mentioned, by the way, last episode that you wanted me to, well, you didn't say it explicitly, but you clearly wanted me to check out the episode where Annoying Orange meets Fred, which, yes, is an event that took place on YouTube. There's a video called Annoying Orange versus Fred, and I know that there's like one on Fred's channel where he finds Orange at the grocery store. I also watched that. It was not the best. But in the Annoying Orange versus Fred episode, Annoying Orange and Fred compete to see who can be the most annoying. And they're so annoying that they blow up the annoying meters, and then the building collapses. And I found that interesting. I mean, for one thing, like, these, like, truly were, at the time, the most annoying YouTube content that existed, without a doubt. In 2010, I mean, 2010, there's just treasure troves of awful content that you can discover, but stuff that's, like, as annoying as Annoying Orange or Fred is probably not going to be easy to find. And the acknowledgement of that so directly was definitely something to see, for sure. And it's really weird to go back to, because... you know, Fred disappeared, or from YouTube anyway, not too long after this. You know, Fred went on to do some, like, movies and a TV show, and then the actor who played Fred stopped being Fred. But Annoying Orange is still going. But you watch back to this old time when these two characters were the titans of YouTube comedy in a lot of ways, and it's just so weird. I gotta stress that even though I remember these days of YouTube really, really, or actually fairly well, and I even have some nostalgia tied to them, I still cannot put myself in the mindset to understand what was appealing about it. It's kind of like when you go back and watch Nyan Cat. For any of you that have seen that, which I would assume most of you have, especially if you were around back then, you've seen it. I think that came out in 2011, but, like, watching that video is just bizarre, because you have no frame of reference for that kind of humor anymore. You're just looking at it, and you're just like, why did people like this? And I just think that, in that sense, Annoying Orange is actually pretty fun to watch.
Yes, the classic days of LOL so random.
Yeah, essentially.
May they live forever.
Well, they have. I mean, actually, now that you mention that, like, when you think about it, like, a lot of cartoons took this whole thing on and still kind of do to this day. I would argue it seems kind of like Adventure Time was the first one to really embrace it, although it was obviously a lot more clever about it. But but like a lot of popular cartoons from the last decade and still continuing to today are still kind of that. Something crazy and wacky random happens. And it came from YouTube. I mean, at least it seems to have come from YouTube and the internet. But online, that kind of thing is so like passe, and it's like so behind us now. It's just weird.
I just mainly don't like how they have teeth.
Teeth
are unsettling.
That is terrifying, yeah.
Okay, Lewis, you want to go ahead and wrap this one up?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, like, I don't know, scoring the channel, like, what, a 2 out of 10, I guess? I don't know why I won't just give it a 1. I'll just give it a 1. Certainly watching, like, the new videos, definitely. But it's, like, for babies, so it's, like, who am I to judge on that? Again, I kind of mildly like the first episode. I don't like it a lot, but I at least can see something in it. But after that, like, it is just the worst. I mean, literally, like, episode 2 and onward, I was just like, what the fuck? Yeah, I don't know, but I do recommend it. Like, I've been talking about it a lot, because I think this is so fascinating. Like, going back and watching the old Annoying Orange videos, like, you should probably do that. You will be baffled by some of them, and like, the fact that people loved these so much. It is baffling, but it's interesting. And if you were around for it and haven't seen it in forever, then you should definitely go look at it now, because it's just weird. And I had a really good time, honestly, watching through it. Not because the videos were good, because they were very, very painful, but just, like, thinking about it was just kind of fun. And revisiting it was just, like, I don't know, it was an interesting experience. But that does not reflect to the quality of the content, which is, of course, just awful. But yeah, that's what I have to say.
Yeah, and I also give it a 1, but I'm going to hit you with the strong do not recommend. It is definitely a timepiece. And as we mentioned, it's like the sheer amount of content across all of the channels that are associated with this channel there is. It's wild. I don't know if you could ever catch up realistically, especially considering they still make content. I don't know if you would want to catch up. I think it would be such a slog to grind your way through this, but it's just crazy to think about.
Yeah, and do we want to move on to recommendations?
Let's do it.
Okay, fantastic. So we've got a theme for the next episode. We're going to be continuing with our Best Of series. A couple episodes ago, we did the Best of the 2010s. Now we are doing the Best of the 1980s. So it's the same rules that apply. We're both selecting a piece of media from a specific medium that we think is either the best or very close to being the best, or I should say one of the best pieces of the reflections of that medium from that decade. So in some of these decades, we might have already recommended each other what we thought was our favorite from that decade or whatever, so we'll have to kind of go down the list, but that's essentially what we're doing here. And so we'll get to that next episode. So what I'm going to recommend for you is the album Doolittle by Pixies. Doolittle came out fairly late into the 80s. It was 1989. And I think is sometimes almost gets viewed as like a 90s album just because it was so close to the 90s, and because Pixies were absolutely one of the most influential 80s alternative rock bands who continued very, very briefly into the 90s. But like Nirvana cites Pixies as such a major influence to the point where Kurt Cobain like just outwardly said that he ripped them off with multiple songs. Pixies, along with bands like REM, Dinosaur Jr., Sonic Youth, and stuff like that, all really contributed a ton to the sound of alternative rock that would, of course, become the mainstream version of rock music for the rest of time, from the 90s and onward. That being said, though, I think what Doolittle is a very different kind of alt-rock than what hit it big. A lot weirder, a lot more quirky, and a lot more out there and eccentric. And we can discuss that when we get to it. And, what do you got for me?
So, Lewis, I am recommending to you a movie. This is 1987's The Princess Bride. The Princess Bride was directed by Rob Reiner. Kind of a modern take on a fairy tale. Pretty straight comedy with a lot of charm, and we will talk about it next time.
Fantastic. And that just about does it. As always, check us out on Castbox. If you did that last week, you probably noticed that I didn't put the episode up. I just put that up today. I kind of forgot. But I usually get them up within a day or so of these coming out. You can listen to them on Castbox. You can listen to them in any other setting from now until the end of time, or until Castbox shuts down or shuts us down. Who knows? But yeah, we're on there. Links should be in the description. Might not be right now, but I'll get it in there. And that's pretty much all I have to say. Do you have anything to add?
Nope, nothing else to add. Just as always, thank you for watching and listening. There's a really great watching experience if you're following us along live on YouTube, where we have the same photos every week for eternity.
Yeah, and it will never change. We will never change it.
And listening on, as Lewis said, either here on YouTube live with us, as a VOD on YouTube, or on Castbox. We thank you again.
Yeah, and join us next time for the best of the 1980s. But as for now, those were our thoughts. Those were our recommendations. Get wrecked.